Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. With me today, I have Jim Lee, Rick Alcantara, and Atif Agha. I would like to talk about being friends with your boss or a key vendor. What are the pros and cons? Rick, kick us off.
Well, there's definitely pros and cons, and I've had both good bosses and bad bosses, and definitely, as we've discussed, I prefer the good bosses. And some of them, after I left the companies and went out and worked on my own, we've remained friends. And I think it just provides it's more conducive to getting work accomplished if you definitely can, work closely with that boss, and you're kind of on that same wavelength, and you both can relate to one another, not just on a work level, but on a personal level. Kind of shared goals, shared concepts. You feel comfortable with how they work, they feel comfortable with how you work. And then, the nice thing about it is you don't feel like it's work. You feel like you're really doing something that matters. And, you don't go into the office every day and just, God, I hate this place. You want to be able to feel like, you appreciate it. You want to feel like you're contributing. You want to feel like somebody recognizes what you're doing. And if all of that happens, it's going to be very fulfilling. Otherwise, on the other side, if you got a bad boss, it's they're never going to pay you enough to put up with all that nonsense. So that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
So one thing is to have a good or a bad boss, right? And that's for sure. I completely agree with you, Rick. I think the other part is, how do you become friends with them? I think let's not start with being friends first. Let's build that relationship, and eventually it should turn into a good friendship, right? So it's a thin line, because the boss is eventually going to make decisions for you, whether it's a salary increase or your annual reviews and things like that, and your career growth as well. So I think it's good to have that friendship with them. I think I've been on both sides. I manage a big vendor team, and especially with vendors, you gotta be in good terms with them, but you still want to maintain that professional relationship. So you basically get, in the end, the results that you're looking for. It's a thin line to walk for sure, but I think I agree with you, Rick. It's got to have a great relationship both ways, and it goes both ways, right? You can be are you going to be a good friend with the team that you support as a boss? I think you should be. You should hang out with them, know them at a personal level, but keep that professional relationship is important as well.
Mm-hmm. I have a client who has a boss who's very good friends with one of their key vendors, and she cannot hold that vendor accountable for anything, because every time she tries to get him to do anything, the vendor goes running to his friend and is like, no, she's being mean.
That's interesting. Yeah. So, you wonder, if you have a friend with a vendor, if that friendship creates better relationships, or in that case, it sounds like it created a worse professional relationship because they had a free pass. And
there's become a conflict of interest.
A little bit. Yeah. That's very interesting. When I saw this question, I was thinking that it's important to be friendly with everyone. And that just makes for better, more, enjoyable relationships, whether it's a boss or whether it's a vendor. But Rick brought up an interesting point, in that you might not know if you're actually friends until the professional relationship is over. Okay. I thought that was really kind of interesting, and in that there are definitely different levels of friendship, from saying hi on the street to having people over for dinner to, calling someone in a moment of need, right? And you have to be careful with your levels of expectations on that friend level in either case. Okay. You can't ask or expect too much beyond what's professional and appropriate.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to the level of maturity of both parties as well. And their ability to kind of keep it professional, because if you're in a corporate setting and you have that really close relationship with your boss, but the rest of the team looks at it and they start getting jealous, then that creates morale problems for the rest of the people on the team. So, you got to kind of walk a fine line with the vendors. I've been on both sides as well. I've been the vendor, and then I've also hired vendors to support my business. And several of the people I've brought on, we've been working together for 10 years or more. And we've got a great relationship, and we connect with each other about things that are not related to work. But then I've also, like I said, I've been the vendor. I've worked with Jim's company And, we've had great conversations, not just about work or just about projects, but it's about all kinds of things, about networking and about, cycling or whatever it happens to be. And I think when you have that kind of relationship, it just makes it easier to work with each other because you kind of are on the same wavelength.
And I agree with you, Rick. I think the level of maturity on both sides is really important. Whether it's a vendor, you hire a friend, sometimes it can turn into a really great partnership where you are producing results, you're delivering projects, and you're doing great. But on the hindsight, if you hire a wrong person who may be your friend and is leaning on you all the time, you're like, what am I stuff got into? Right? So you got to move away from that and make the right decision. I think if you hire a qualified person for the right job, not just because they're your friend, you will get a better result. But if you make favors, it might come back and bite you. So I think you got to make the right decisions. And but in the end, regardless of how it starts, I think it always should. It's better to cultivate into a good friendship with your peers, with your team, and also especially vendors you work with. It's also important to have a great relationship. It just has always worked very well. But
so how do you know? How do you know if your friendship is getting in, if you are running into that conflict of interest? Like, how do you notice that? Because other people are going to see it really easily. But how do you, if you're friends with your boss or friends with a vendor or friends with an employee, how do you tell if you're kind of doing that friends and get better choices kind of thing?
Yeah, well, one might show up in favoritism, okay? And that creates envy, which creates bad vibes for everyone. In that, even though you may have a personal relationship, on a professional level, everything needs to stay a level playing field. And I think that's going to help out a lot.
Is that a thing? If you're friends with someone, can you keep a level playing field?
At least you try,
So that comes down to a good leader, right? If you're managing a team, you need to understand how to be fair with everyone and not really make favors to one person who may be closer to you, or maybe, who knows, he might be just sucking out and just saying things to you that you want to hear, and he's just trying to get favors from you as well. So I think it's important to as a leader in any place, to be fair.
And it's a matter of holding people to the same standards. I equate a lot of things that, I've done on these calls with my coaching in sports, and I've coached sports for 24 years. And one of the ways to kind of keep the team all on the ssame wavelength is you've got to show everybody the kind of same, level of expectations and the same level of, criticisms and the same level of recognition. I've even coached my own kids, and I've told them right up front, I said, look, you're not going to get treated any better. You're not going to get treated any worse. If everybody's going to run, you're going to run. If they're going to do push-ups, you're going to do push-ups. That's just how it is.
And also the same level of enthusiasm as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's key too, right?
Yeah. When I was in high school, my dad taught at the high school I went to, and I took several classes from him. And I can tell you, he was harder on me than anyone else in that class. I would not get partial credit for stuff because he didn't want there to be favoritism. So he was definitely much harder on me. And I don't think that's right either. So I want to thank you for having this conversation with me. I think it's been great. I think what we're saying is that you can be friends with a boss or your employees or vendors, but you have to be careful about the favoritism, and you have to pay attention to it because other people are going to see it before you do. So thanks so much for having this conversation with me. I look forward to having a next one.
Thank you.
Take care.